All right, everyone. Tuesday, the 29th of July today. I hope you are all well. Bit of a quieter day news-wise. There's actually not a great deal happening at all. But there's still plenty for us to chat about because I don't know if you venture to the comment section of these videos. Yeah, they can be an interesting place from time to time. And yesterday was certainly one of those days. A lot of very strong opinions, obviously, about Celtic at the moment. That's because we all care about Celtic. And even though we all have different views, varying degrees of different views on Celtic, I think hopefully they all come from the right place. I'm waffling. So, basically today we're going to chat a bit about transfers and how we feel about, just generally how we feel about Celtic right now. What are we, a few days out from the start of the competitive season? As always, if you are new to the channel, and I know a number of you have come across the channel over the past few weeks, please consider subscribing and actually do it. Just click the button. It's completely free, and we're well over the 16,000 mark now. So it's a big family that you're joining. Also, the audio-only podcast that goes up for every single video that we do is going incredibly well. Numbers have shot right up. There's over 1,300 of you using that and listening to the show every single day, which is amazing. So thanks if you do that. If you do just watch the channel, that's absolutely fine. But if you feel you want to have extra options in terms of listening while you're out and about, travelling to work, out a run, at the gym, etc., then why not give it a go? Just search Celtic AM on your chosen podcast platform. There's also links in the description. Right, as I say, there is a bit of a news shortage today, so we're going to have more of an opinion video. And I think, yeah, definitely for the team, it's like a case of getting back into the kind of more in-house type stuff. I mean, obviously over pre-season, they do a hell of a lot of interviews at training camps, and you get far more training footage and all the unfiltered stuff that Celtic put out. Obviously pre-season's over now, so I think we're just going to get back into the swing of things with the competitive stuff and the routine that the players are normally in, but you don't really tend to hear from Celtic throughout the week if we're just playing weekend matches. Just in terms of what the players are up to, so they trained in Italy on Sunday morning, then flew back to Glasgow, and they've actually been given a couple of days off at the start of this week. So they were off yesterday, they're off today as well, and back into training tomorrow to build ahead to the St Mirren game, which is a later one. It's a late afternoon game on Sunday, so plenty of time for them to get warmed up for that. Obviously, in terms of transfers, we've had a few reports, but things have gone a bit quiet in recent days, which, you can maybe read certain things into. Certainly feels like we're not going to have any new signings in and ready to play in our league opener against St Mirren on Sunday. So, yeah, this is the squad that we're looking at right now for the start of the competitive action. I covered this in depth last week, so I'm not going to go over it all again, but basically my verdict was that I felt we needed a centre-back partner for Cameron Carter-Vickers, a replacement for Nicholas Kuhn on the right, a left-wing option, potentially a loan given the far from ideal situation with Jota, and also a first-choice striker, brackets replacement for Kyogo. So that's 3 starters that I feel we need to sign, which is, a fair amount of work. That's real quality we're looking to bring in, but it's also doable. I think we've got we've got a month until the window shuts to get these players in, as much as, I think we all feel we'd like them in as soon as possible. The reality here is that I think Celtic are going to be going up to the deadline. Obviously that relies on us keeping everyone as well, but my point looking at that squad is that I don't think it's a disaster that's maybe been made out at times. I think there's a hell of a lot of good players in there. We've just lost a few key players recently that we need to replace, and we've lost Kyogo, Kuhn and Jota to injury, so you feel like we really need to replace those 3 positions. But yeah, in terms of players leaving this summer, I think there's been a lot of good work done by the club. I've actually been dare I say it, kind of impressed with how efficiently we've been able to get players out of the door. There's maybe a certain element of irony in that, but you've had like Scott Bain, Gustav Lagerbielke, Yuku Kwon have all left permanently, Mike Naropski, Lewis Palma, and soon to be Marco Tilio, who I didn't even include on that graphic. They're all going to be leaving on loan with options to buy, so they're as good as gone as well. Adam Montgomery's gone out on loan to Livingston. Jude Bonner and also now Kyle Ewer have officially joined Ayr United on season-long loans under Scott Brown. So I think good work has been done there in terms of like streamlining the squad. And I don't know if it's a controversial opinion, but I do think if, and it's a huge if, we're able to get those first team quality additions, centre-back, right-wing, striker, and also like a left winger as well, as I say, potentially alone just with the Jota situation. I think it's a good squad. I think it's a really, really good squad. Having said that, that's me like definitely putting a positive spin on things. Like you can't deny that like transfer windows these days are incredibly frustrating as a Celtic fan. I think you'd have to have very, very good patience not to become frustrated at some point during the window, just with how dragged out deals seem to be. I mean, I commented on this a few weeks ago. We appear to love a transfer saga more than any other club. For me, like the big thing is Celtic like just seem to be really reactive to things, and we don't appear to like have a plan in place. So like the obvious recent examples, like back in January, we lose Kyogo Furuhashi, who I think Brendan Rodgers said, it's fairly obvious he wanted to leave for a while, and we didn't replace him in January. And I know people at the time, we're kind of, I don't know, putting on a brave face or whatever and saying, we'll be absolutely fine here. But I think the reality is you do look at how the second half of last season went, both in terms of like immediately after Kyogo left and that Aston Villa game a week later, with Kyogo, do we maybe get a better result, finish higher up in the Champions League and maybe avoid Bayern Munich? Even that Bayern Munich tie itself, now it's a ridiculous thing to say up against Bayern Munich, but that was a really close tie in the end. And if we'd had Kyogo at our disposal or a replacement, then potentially, that goes to extra time and maybe we find a way past Bayern Munich. Like it was a close tie that. And certainly like you're looking at the treble last year in the Scottish Cup final, given Kyogo's record at Hampden with Kyogo in the team. I certainly don't think we've got a worse chance with him in the team of winning the treble. And now you look at like the Nicholas Kuhn stuff, and again, Kuhn, who I think again we've known was going to leave for a while, he's left us, and like I'm not saying this is definitely the case, but like the perception is that the club are kind of scrambling a little bit to find the Nicholas Kuhn replacement. Was it Isaac Janssen? Well, we got those reports and then suddenly 48 hours later, if that, he's standing with a knee scarf above his head. So who is it going to be now? It doesn't appear like the club had the Nicholas Kuhn replacement ready to go, even though they knew Kuhn was going to leave this summer. I saw some people chatting online about Sporting, who we obviously played a couple of weeks ago, and their big player, Victor Gyökeres, who has now moved to Arsenal. I think that was announced on Saturday that he'd moved from Sporting to Arsenal for like a crazy fee, €76.2 million. Now, Sporting already have the replacement for Gyökeres in. They've signed a €25 million Luis Suarez from Almeria. They knew that their star player was going. They had a replacement ready for him. And without being a Sporting fan or speaking to any Sporting fans, I would guess that their support would be pretty on board with that. There would have been a level of understanding, like at Celtic, that your best players are going to leave to go to bigger leagues. And that's fine. If you got a replacement in, fans can get on board with that. Again, perception is pretty important here. Sporting fans will feel like their club have a plan and their club have it together. Like how we felt when Ange Postecoglou was the manager, and I know it's pretty kind of widely understood now that Ange Postecoglou was running his entire kind of recruitment team, I think, along with like Paul Trimboli. And And yeah, there was a few examples, like even from his first summer window when Celtic kind of didn't have it all together. You may remember, like we sold Christopher Ayer, and I think in the same afternoon, like an hour apart, we announced that Carl Starfelt had joined the club. Obvious replacement there. His second season, Alistair Johnson is in before Josip Juranovic even leaves the club. We barely even missed Josip Juranovic in any way, and Juranovic was a great player for us. Georgios Giakoumakis leaves, Hyun-Yu Oh comes in, and again, it's as much as O didn't massively work out, there was an obvious replacement there. And like now at Celtic, it just feels like the club are scrambling a bit, and when you get like reports of us bidding 3 times for the go-ahead Eagles, Jakob Braham, with the largest of those 3 bids still being like less than half of what go-ahead Eagles actually want for him, and have been very public in what they want for him, then it does feel like we don't have much of a clue. And I mean, Usky Bear commented saying either Braham is the guy or he isn't. If he is, just pay them the damn money they're asking for. And that seems very simplistic, but it's also how I feel. Now, there are obvious difficulties in negotiating deals. Like Brendan Rodgers has pointed that out on a number of occasions, and like he'll be right. He's not making that up. It'll be difficult for the club to get deals done with, you know, various different things happening, whether it's the player they're dealing with, other clubs, the club they're dealing with. But like, I think we're all just calling out for Celtic to be like more decisive in the transfer window. If you want a player, just go and get the deal done. Like again, just last example, I promise, but under Ange Postecoglou, remember the whole Riley McGree fiasco? Or sorry, it wasn't a fiasco, but we were going to sign him, and then he didn't want to come eventually, and how quickly we moved to sign Matt O'Reilly. We had a plan in place, and we were decisive. Like, imagine that situation now. You just know Celtic would be stumbling for weeks and weeks, either trying to convince Riley McGree to come to the club, or stumbling to try and find the other player we'd go for. So I just wanted to get all of that out there, because there's kind of 2 parts of this video, and like one part is that I'm genuinely not happy with how Celtic do their business. I think we are a big club, and we just don't appear to behave like that in the transfer window. And I just want to get that on record, so that like I'm not accused of being like a happy clapper or anything like that, because there is another side of this that I do think there's still a lot to be excited, and I'm still really excited about this season. If you're asking me whether I'm excited about the new season or dreading it, 100% excited, 0% dreading it, and that's the honest truth. I'm really looking forward to things. So yeah, I just wanted to get out the fact I'm not happy with how the club are doing things. I don't think it's all right, and like there's other aspects of this as well. I think it's no secret that people, you know, are a bit frustrated, to, you know, put it mildly, with the Celtic board at the moment, and how certain things are perceived. And I think the fact that they're constantly appear to be kind of take from us as fans, and there's been some, you know, various examples of that, whether it's season tickets, which went up again, or Celtic TV clips being behind a paywall, or the Newcastle friendly not being on the season ticket, or the million different kits that the club have put forward already this season. And I know, you know, someone will comment and say, oh, they're not forcing you to buy them. For me, that's missing the point. It's the perception of how we as fans feel about the club, that they're just constantly asking us for stuff. It doesn't feel like we are like valued fans. It feels like we're customers. It doesn't feel like we're all in this together. It feels like we're just an opportunity for them to get money. So yeah, again, not massively happy about that. However, I do think that like the feeling of negativity around the club isn't in line with what we've actually been seeing from the team. Okay, I know second half of last season, you know, was disappointing. I think there were reasons for that. And part of that might have been like the transfer stuff, losing Kyogo, not replacing him, and the tone that set. But I also think being so far in the league, and also like the emphasis that everyone, fans, management, players, placed on the Champions League. So I thought the football we played first half of last season was right up there for me in terms of quality, enjoyment, excitement. As I've already said, I think we have a pretty strong squad that's got some areas that definitely need improvement and have to be improved. But, you know, we've got some really good players. Some of the best players I've seen play for Celtic over the past couple of decades. Alistair Johnson, I think, is the best right back in that period. Kieran Tierney's definitely the best left back. Cameron Carter-Vickers is one of the best centre backs, along with probably Virgil van Dijk. Callum McGregor is one of the best captains we've seen at Celtic. You know, we've got Rail Hatate, Dyson Maeda, Jota. Like, we have a lot of reasons to feel, you know, incredibly good about this squad. And also some players from last season who I think will be better this year. There's probably signs already that Austin Trusty's looking like a better player. I do think Arnie Engels will really come onto a game. I think Adam Ida, while he has his flaws, will score goals for us again. So no real disasters there. Obviously, I genuinely believe every Celtic fan is entitled to their opinion, because, as I say, like, we all want the best for Celtic. If you're a Celtic fan, you want Celtic to win. So everything should come from the right place. But I do think some of the stuff has been over the top. Like, I just think need to calm down a little bit. Like, sure, the transfer stuff, as I've outlined for a good 5-10 minutes there, is very frustrating. Like, of course it is. You want to see Celtic being a big club and building from a position of strength, and it's frustrating when it just appears like we're losing our best players and not replacing them, and our signings are taking ages and all of that stuff. But I think the reality here is that Celtic are going to be okay this season. Like, I'm not saying we're definitely going to go and win the league or the treble. I think it's going to be more of a challenge this year. I think Rangers are going to be better. I mean, they were awful last season and so many recent seasons. I think Rangers are going to be stronger. I'm not worried about it though. Like, I'm totally up for the challenge. I think you've got to embrace the challenge and back this Celtic team and Brendan Rodgers and Callum McGregor to be better than Rangers and you know, have another season of domestic dominance. Like, they've done it so many times before. And let me just say, by the way, that this is not like a new feeling we're all experiencing. I remember a year ago, I recently started this channel, maybe 6 months or so in, and I remember having a conversation with John McGinley. And I went back and watched it this morning. I've actually clipped up a good chunk of it here for you to have a look at. This is from a year ago, August the 8th last year, so it's slightly later. But listen to what we're talking about and how much of, especially what John is saying, applies to what we're experiencing right now, a year on.
You know, I think you're right, because it's difficult, and it sometimes feels like there's two almost hypocritical strands of supporting Celtic right now, where you're pleased with the progress of the team on the pitch and very wary of, you know, what's going on off the pitch, very wary of kind of the structure behind the scenes at the club, the recruitment process, and obviously 2 or 3 slow transfer windows now that have been kind of confusing and not as productive as we'd want them to be. Again, we're going to get into it, but the transfer window stuff is frustrating, and I can understand where Celtic fans are coming from, the ones who are worried, because you can't just dismiss it as moaning and entitlement, because it's not that. I know what Celtic fans at its core, Hamish, and I know what you're worried about. I know what every Celtic fan is worried about. They're worried we're going to sell Matt O'Reilly, we're going to get 2 or 3 loan signings in, and we might make some sort of mid-range signing and maybe bring in Adam Ida. And that's what everyone's worried about. And I don't think that's going to cut it over the next few weeks. And I think Celtic need to be very proactive in these last few weeks to get us the players that we want and that Brendan Rodgers has made clear that he wants to.
My feeling is that if you pitch yourself at that level and strengthen, the domestic stuff, you know, should kind of take care of itself. But I guess it's been pretty slow, and I'm always wary of. It's so difficult because windows should really be judged at the end, because that's when the window's over, and obviously this could still turn out to be a great window, and I actually still have hope that it might turn out to be a great window and we might get the quality left back and centre back and all of that stuff in, but you can only really call it as we go at the moment, and it's just been so slow. What's your take on why we're at the 8th of August and have only signed one outfielder, and it's a player who was here last season?
There's a lot of theories. And, you spin them round in your head, and I do it all the time. You spin round, is it the biscuit tin mentality? Is it, the disciples of Peter Lawwell, now in charge of the club, doing things the way that they've always been done in terms of a risk-averse strategy? I think slowly but surely I'm coming round to the conclusion that I don't know if Celtic are well enough equipped or know how to bridge this gap between the 3, 4, and 5 million pound signings and the 10, 11 million pound signings. I think once you start shopping in a little bit more expensive market, those players have more options available to them. It's difficult to get them on contracts that fit within the wage structure of the club. And none of this absolves Celtic, because I think Celtic are a big club with a lot of resources, and they should have people in place in positions of power who know how to bridge this gap and know how to ramp up this recruitment. I actually don't think that all this cash in the bank, all this stuff, I don't think they're sitting on it for the sake of it, because it doesn't actually make business sense to hoard cash. It's inefficient. It's not efficient. So even if they're thinking from a purely business perspective, I don't think they want all that cash sitting in the bank, because it's not doing anyone any good. I mean, you saw them finally invest in Barrowfield, for example, which has cost a good few £1 million. And I just think they don't know how to do it. I think they're struggling with recruitment. I think they're struggling shopping in the markets they want to shop in.
Now, if you think transfer windows are stressful, and they are, try dealing with dodgy internet connections, slow streams, or region-locked content when you're trying to scout players on YouTube or catch a pre-season friendly. That's where NordVPN steps in. It keeps your connection fast, secure, and private, and lets you switch your virtual location. So if the Celtic rumour mill is a bit slow and you fancy checking out how the European press are covering things, boom, Nord's got you covered. Just earlier, I found myself browsing Dutch TV and De Oosterboon, a chat show focusing on transfers in the Eredivisie, and they had the go-ahead Eagles chief with a brilliant name, Jan-Willem van Dop, on, and he was asked about Jacob Braham, and he was playing down talk that go-ahead Eagles are asking for too much money for Braham, and he brought up the example of PSV Eindhoven recently paying €15 million for Ruben van Bommel, the son of Mark van Bommel from AZ Alkmaar. He was basically saying, clubs like AZ Alkmaar can ask for big fees, why can't we? So I thought that was quite interesting. So the big question would be, will Celtic pay the money for Braham? And I guess we'll have to wait and see on that. But yeah, if you want to get involved with NordVPN, go to nordvpn.com/Celtic AM. You get a big discount and an extra 4 months free as well. And yeah, it helps to support the channel as well. Right, back to the transfer stuff. So yeah, we had Thomas Burns, great name, getting in touch saying, I'm not as confident as this time last year going into the new season. I do just think that clip of me chatting to John a year ago shows like we felt very similarly last year, and we're quite concerned about all the same things that we're concerned about now. Celtic not building from a position of strength, key players leaving and not being replaced. The exact same conversations we're having now, and look how good last season started, and overall what a good season last year was. We won the double, we had our best European season in like well over a decade. And I think there's similarities already this season. We've got like the two things going on that John spoke about a year ago, the kind of frustration with the transfers, but also a bit of excitement with how the team are playing. And I thought in pre-season we saw some really good stuff, and I think Celtic are going to make a fast start to the new season. Obviously, one big difference is that we've got the Champions League qualifier this year, and that's probably added even more tension to things, and like that is no gimme. That's going to be tough for the team. There's no other way around that. I still back Celtic to make it to the Champions League phase and get through that tie. Ideally, we have a couple of players in before then to help us do that. If not, it's obviously going to be harder, but I'd still back Celtic to get there and possibly win a double this season, maybe even a treble. Like, that's kind of how I see things going. As I say, like, that's not me being cocky. I just think that Celtic still have the best manager in the country by a good bit, we still have the best squad in the country by a good bit. I just think some of the talk is a little bit over the top about, Celtic, as I say, being doomed to fail this season. Like, yeah, we need to bring in quality. We all know that. We would all have loved to have done it by now. And yeah, I've still got some concerns about Celtic bringing in quality. Like, I do wonder if Shin Yamada makes a fast start, whether the club will look at the striker position and feel, we're probably all right with Ida, Yamada and one of Kenny or Osmond being our three, and we probably don't need to strengthen that position. When for me the reality is that even if Yamada starts well, we should still be looking to sign a main striker because we have the money, we need to replace Kyogo, and that's what Brendan Rodgers wants. I think we'll get a centre back, might be a loan, which we discussed yesterday. I think we'll get a right winger, that's the one I'm most confident about. Left winger we need as well, we'll wait and see what happens with that. But yeah, like I think Celtic will spend money. We spent a lot of money at the end of last year's transfer window. I think it was £26 million we spent in the final 2 weeks of the window. And I see Celtic maybe not spending that much, but I see us spending considerable money at the end of the window. I don't really understand the argument that we won't. And last but not least, let's not forget that like pre-season is traditionally the time when Rangers become champions, and it's their fans and the media bigging them up because they're the chasers and everyone wants a bit of excitement. My one kind of sad thing about this year is that I think some Celtic fans have bought into that as well, and it's like, Rangers are going to get us and stuff like that. And like they might, there's no certainties in football, but I just think demand more from Celtic all the time, but back Brendan Rodgers and Callum McGregor in this Celtic squad to do what they always seem to do and rise to the occasion. And as Brendan Rodgers said, I think midway through, not last season, but the year before, Rangers are always coming during his time at the club. And he kind of always sees them off. So I think we should all be excited about the new season that's starting in a few days rather than dreading it. Hopefully Celtic get the business done and the transfer window can end. And a bit like last season, I'm sure we'll all start to feel a hell of a lot better.